Imagine this. You walk into the supermarket to buy that brand new cell phone you've been wanting. The price? Sky high. Or you are working in your factory and suddenly, global competition hits you hard, the company starts having problems. What does all of this have to do with a word that, on the surface, seems pretty boring, tariffs? Well, what if I told you that behind that invisible tax, there's an economic battle directly affecting your wallet, your job, and even your life? What's more, perhaps the people you think are footing the bill aren't paying anything at all. Welcome to Tariffs Explained, who really pays the price. My name is Your Name Channel Name, and today we are going to demystify one of the most misunderstood concepts in the global economy. You hear a lot about tariffs, especially in news reports about trade wars, disputes between countries, and even when you are buying something imported. But what are they, really? And why do they cause such a stir? At its core, a tariff is a tax. It's that simple. It's a tax on imported goods and services. Think of it as a kind of toll that a product has to pay to enter a country. The idea is, in theory, to make foreign products more expensive, encouraging the consumption of domestic products. Sounds like a good idea, right? Protecting local industries, creating jobs. But is reality that simple? The truth is, the story is much more complex, and the impacts are often unpredictable. To understand why tariffs are still such a hot topic, we need to go back a bit in time. Tariffs aren't a modern invention. They've existed for centuries. From the earliest times, governments used tariffs to raise money and, of course, to protect their nascent industries. Think of the age of exploration, for example. European countries like England and France imposed tariffs on products from other empires to strengthen their own manufacturing. This protectionist mindset dominated much of global economic history. The argument was always the same: defend ours against theirs. However, over time, especially after World War II, the world began to move towards greater trade liberalization. Organizations like the WTO, World Trade Organization, were created with the goal of reducing barriers and promoting free trade, arguing that this would bring greater prosperity for everyone. But then, why do tariffs still insist on appearing like a ghost from the past, haunting international relations and your wallet? The answer lies in how they work in practice. Okay, time to simplify. Imagine you have a company in Brazil that manufactures sneakers. And there's a company in China that also manufactures sneakers, but with much lower production costs. If Chinese sneakers enter Brazil without any barriers, they'll be much cheaper than yours, right? To try and balance the scales, the Brazilian government can impose a tariff on Chinese sneakers. This tariff is a percentage added to the price of the imported sneaker. For example, if the sneaker costs 100 reais in China and the Brazil imposes a tariff of 20%, it will arrive here costing 120 reais, not counting other costs, of course. Who collects this tariff? It's usually the government of the importing country at the moment the product enters its territory. The idea behind this is twofold. First, revenue collection for the government. Second, and more important for the debate, protecting domestic industry. Theoretically, if the Chinese sneaker becomes more expensive, The Brazilian consumer will look at your Brazilian-made sneaker and think, maybe the price difference isn't so big now, and I'm helping the local economy. But it's here that the thing gets interesting, and the puzzle starts to come together. The big question is, who absorbs this extra cost? The Chinese company? The Brazilian consumer? Your sneaker company in Brazil? The answer isn't so obvious. And we come to the crux of the matter, the great mystery of tariffs, who in the end really pays the bill. Intuition tells us it's the exporting country, meaning the foreign company. After all, the tariff is imposed on their products. But the real economy shows us a much more complex and sometimes counterintuitive scenario. Let's use an example that marked the last decade, the trade war between the USA and China. During the Trump administration, the US imposed massive tariffs on billions of dollars in Chinese products. The idea was to force China to change its trade practices and at the same time protect American industry. But what happened in practice? Studies from renowned institutions like the American Central Bank and the International Monetary Fund showed that the majority of the cost of these tariffs was, in fact, transferred to the American companies that imported Chinese products, and consequently to American consumers. Think with me, if an American company imports parts from China and these parts become more expensive because of the tariff, this company has some options. It can absorb the cost and have less profit, or it can pass this cost on to the final product. Most of the time, what happens? The final product price increases, and whoever buys it is the consumer. So, you, as a consumer, may be paying more for that electronic, that clothing, that toy, without even knowing that a tariff at the border is directly influencing the final price. In addition, importing companies can also seek other suppliers in countries that are not affected by tariffs, which generates complexity in the supply chain and often more bureaucracy and costs. In summary, the exporting companies of the tariffed country may even feel an initial impact on demand, but the greater weight, frequently, falls on the importer and, ultimately, on the consumer of the country that imposed the tariff. What a twist, isn't it? What was meant to protect you may be costing you more. This dynamic raises a millennial debate in economics: protectionism versus free market. On one side, the defenders of protectionism argue that tariffs are essential tools to protect strategic industries, guarantee national security, and create jobs. The idea is to shield the local economy from unfair competition from other countries. On the other side, the defenders of the free market argue that tariffs distort prices, harm competitiveness, generate inefficiencies, and, in the end, limit options and increase costs for consumers. They defend that global competition, without barriers, forces companies to be more efficient and to innovate, benefiting everyone. And the consequences of tariffs can go far beyond the price of products. They can generate retaliation from other countries, unleashing true trade wars, as we saw between the USA and China. This can affect the exports of the country that imposed the tariff, harm local companies that depend on imported raw materials, and even delay technological development. In addition, emerging countries, which often depend on exports to grow, may be the most affected by these barriers, hindering their insertion into the global economy. It is a complex game where there are not always clear winners. So, returning to our initial question, who really pays the price of tariffs? As we have seen, the answer is not linear. Although the intention is to protect domestic industry and raise funds for the government, in practice, the cost is often passed on to importers and, consequently, to us, consumers. It is a complex web of interests that directly affects our daily lives, from the price of that smartphone you so much want to the general cost of living. Next time you hear about tariffs or trade wars, remember, it is not just a fight between giants between countries. It is something that resonates and reaches your home, your pocket, your consumption choices. It is the global economy acting invisibly, but with real impact. And you, who do you think suffers most from tariffs? The governments that impose them. The companies that export. Or us, the consumers, who in the end are the ones who pay the bill. Leave your opinion in the comments below. We really want to know your perspective. If you enjoyed this journey through the world of tariffs and want to unravel more mysteries of economics in a clear and didactic way, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell so you don't miss any new videos, and share this content with your friends. And if you want to know how currency devaluation can affect your finances, click on the video that appears now on the screen.